Hello everyone, welcome to Weapon Technologies. Myself Weapon, and today we are going to discuss about models in MVC. What exactly models mean in MVC, right? So let's start. Objective of the video today is we will learn what is a model and what is the role of a model and how we can add a new model in our application and how we can return model from controller to a view. Because when data is being returned from controller to the view, so the model plays a very important role in between that, and how to use model on a particular view, and how a particular view we can connect particular model, right? So what is a model basically? So basically model is a main pillar of MVC, which means that as you can see, M stands for model, V view, and C for controller, right? And model is nothing. It is basically a normal classes containing like properties and methods. As we used to define our normal classes, that contains state and behavior of a particular class, right? So similarly, model is also a normal class, and the extension of that class is .cs file, and which usually contains properties and methods, right? In the upcoming session, we will be seeing how we can create a model. So don't worry about that. I'll show you. And model is basically responsible for data. Whatever data we are bringing from the database, so it is basically going through with the help of model to the view, right? In a real application, when we are working in the industries, so in a real application, we used to bring data from the database by models, right? And once data is received from the database, that particular controller action method which has to take the decision whether it's going to return a view or partial view or JSON or string or XML, whatever it is going to return, that is done with the help of models only, right? Now, moving to the next slide, that what we have did till now in my last videos, if you have seen that we create a controller, and after creation of controller, we used to return the view, right? But now in this video, when we are returning a view or any particular view with the help of controller, so the controller achieve that task with the help of this model only, right? Let's suppose after hitting the database, controller is fetching the data from the database, and after fetching the data from a database, controller now the responsibility of the controller is that it has to render the data to the particular view, right? And this can be done with the help of model only, right? So in that case, the concept of model comes into the picture, right? So let's switch to the Visual Studio without wasting any time, right? So I'm going to create a new application. In this series, I'm using Visual Studio 2015 Professional. You can see over here, right? And let's create a new project. What we did in our earlier videos. So we are going to create a ASP.NET web application with the target framework, this latest one, right? And now this time, let's suppose we give it a meaningful name. So we are going to learn about models from the scratch. So let's give model in MVC, right? And let's click on OK button. Okay, that's already exist in the folder. Okay, so let's give model in MVC to differentiate it. Now it is asking for the what kind of template we want to choose. So let's take a empty, as we are learning from the scratch about model, and let's tick this checkbox MVC. So we are doing the same step what we did earlier in my last videos. So it is going to create an application. It will provide us the MVC project structure. So let's wait for a couple of seconds. Yeah, So we can see it has created a MVC project structure, and it has added all the required details and required files what we want. So let's start. So in my last videos, you might have remember that we discussed about the controllers and the views, right? But in this video we are going to discuss about models, right? So if you haven't watched my last videos on controllers and views, so I would strongly recommend you to please go and watch that all those videos before proceeding this video, right? So let's start about models. So for creating a model, let's create a controller, because we have taken empty, we have created a empty project. So we are repeating the same steps what we did in the last. MVC controller empty, and I'm going to create it, and let's give it a meaningful name. Home controller, right? Create. So it is going to create a home controller for us. Yes, so we can see we have created a home controller, and now let's suppose for for this action method, let's create a view for this action method, and we can directly create a view for this action method directly from this action method. Right click on this method and on this area of any particular uh, we have to right click in this whole vision anywhere. So just right click and add view. It will add a view, and we have to uncheck this checkbox. In the upcoming videos I will be telling you about all these things, but as of now you keep it to default, and view name is index as the same name action method, right? So we are taking the same, so we are going to take the same. Let's click on add button, and now it is going to create a index view. We can see under the home folder it has created index view. So till now we did the same thing what we did in the last videos. We have created the controller, and after controller we have created a view for this action method, right? Let's go to the view and just remove it. Let's take rid of it, right? And now our HTML is looking same what we did earlier, right? And now let's go to models folder and let's create a model. So for creating a model, we need to right click on the model, and we need to click on add, and we can add a class from here. But somehow if you are not getting this option, this class option from here, you can get it from here, add, and we have to click on the new item. And after clicking on this new item, we can click on the Visual C Sharp, and we can choose this class, right? And now we are going to name this class. We are going to give a meaningful name. Let's suppose employee, right? And click on the add button. Now we can see it has created a model employee.cs. Now I'm going to define some properties in this employee model. So let's create a property, right? So that's a shortcut which I am using to create a properties. What we have to do, just type prop, PORP, and click two times tab key on your keyboard, right? So it will generate a stuff for the property, right? So now we are going to create a property. Let's suppose ID, and next property, let's suppose ID and name. So we are going to and the data type, this will be a string, right? And the next one is address, string, and let's create one more property. Let's suppose age, right? And age is of integer type. So we can see we have created a employee class, and this employee class is under models, right? So under models, we are going to create all type of classes like this type only. So basically all the classes we are going to contain under the models, and all these classes basically contains your properties and methods, right? So let's save this. And now after creation of this employee, let's go to the our controller page, and for this index section method we have already created our view. To check, we can click on this action method and go to view. It will take us to that particular view which is associated to this action method, right? So this is our view, right? So now let's create one method which is going to contain the data, which is we are going to render that data to our index view, right? So let's create one method, and now we want to use this employee class, right? So we want to use this employee class under in this home controller, right? So for using all the classes which is being defined in the model, so we need to give the reference of this project. We need to give the reference of this project in our home controller, right? So for that we need to import the namespace using, so our name of the application is models in MVC, you can write. So using models in MVC, and in this application we are having the model folder, right? So we will access through dot models, right? And now semicolon. Now we can use all the models which are being defined under this model, right? So on this controller page, right? So on any controller, if we want to use these models, all the models, or any specific models in any action method, for that we need to import this namespace for using all the models in our controller, right? So now let's create uh, a method, and let's suppose get employee data, right? And the return type of this method is of the same type, that is of your employee type, right? So let's go here, and the return type of this method is of type employee, right? So it is you can see it is basically coming from models in MVC in models dot employee, right? When I am hovering this mouse, right? Now let's prepare some dummy data, and we can return, and the return should be of employee type because we are returning the data of employee type. Return new employee, and let's suppose we are assigning, so in this employee class what properties we have defined, uh, we can press F12, right? And it will take us to the definition of that class. So ID, name, address, and age, right? So we need to define all these. We need to assign some dummy data. So let's take ID equal to, let's take 5, then your name equal to, let's take weapon, and your then address field is there, let's take Delhi, India, right? And now the next field is age, so let's assign 45, whatever we want, right? So now what we did, we created one private method, and this method is going to return employee type of data, right? And we have already assigned some dummy data to this employee class, right? And now this method we are going to call in our this action method. So let's suppose get employee data we are calling, and it is going to give us the data of type employee. So we are storing it into of where data, right? So so now when we will call from our browser this home controller and this index section method, so it is going to call this method, right? And this method is going to return the data of employee type, and we are going to assign this data into this variable, right? And but in a real application or in the real scenario, we used to bring the data from our database, right? But here, to make you understand, I have taken some dummy data to make you understand. But in a real-time application, we used to bring the data from our database. So our controller will hit the database with the help of data access layer. So that I will be telling you in the upcoming video. So don't worry about that. In this video, we are going to focus about only on the models, right? So now this model we have called over here in this action method, and this method is going to assign data. And now this data we are going to now this particular action method is going to return view, right? And this view, if if you see, pay attention here, that this view is going to take, or it is basically having overloading parameters approximate 8, right? We can pass simply this one, we can pass simply the I type view name, we can pass the object model, we can pass the only the view name, right? We can pass, or you can see over here, right? Then we can pass these two parameters, then we can pass view name and the object model. Object model is basically the actual data which we are going to contain in this object, and we are going to return to the particular view, right? So these all are the parameters, but as of now we are going to assign this data in this view, right? So and now this particular action method is returning this view, and this view is containing this data, right? So this data will be binded on this particular view, to which particular view it is associated, right? So now let's go to our index.cs HTML, and on this HTML we are going to use this employee model, right? Because we are binding the data in this employee class, right? So let's so for using the employer model, for using this employer model on this index.cs HTML page, we need to write model, and then we need to import the namespace, uh, model in MVC, right? Then our models, and then the name of the that particular class or model which we have created in the models folder. You can see over here. So for this view, we want to use employer model, right? So we are going to use this employee model, right? And now under div, we are going to define table. So for saving the time, I have already copied this snippet, and I have created this table under div block, and you can see what I did. I created a table, and under that table, I have taken 4 rows, because we are going to display our employee data, which is ID, name, address, and age, right? And this data is coming from where? From our this controller action method, and this action method is calling this employee data method, and this method is going to return the data of type employee, right? And this data we have assigned to this particular view, and this view is basically using this employee model to bind the data on this particular view. So I have taken these 4 rows, and under each row I have taken these columns, 2 columns. One is for displaying data, and the other column will display the actual data, right? So let's open it, and in this column we are going to display name, and in this column we are going to display address, and in this column we are going to display age, right? And now we are going to bind the actual data which is coming into this employer model, right? So for binding the data, we used to write at the rate, and we remember, pay attention here, we used to write model, we used to take the model M capital here, right? And model, then dot, and then we can see all the properties which we have taken in our employee class: address, age, ID name, right? So now we are going to bind the actual data ID model.id. Similarly for name at the rate in capital M model, then model dot name. We are getting the property over here name, and similarly we used to take for address model dot address, and for age also, right? Getting my point? So so as of now, what we have done on this view, on this particular view, we have imported the namespace of employer model, because on this view we are going to use the employer model, right? Because on this view we are going to bind the actual data, and the actual data is coming through this employer model, right? So that's why we have basically given the reference of this employer model on this view, right? Now our view is also binded. Now let's save the file, and now let's run. We can run it from here or press F5 from the browser, right? So let's see. Firstly, it will compile the application. You can see over here, build succeeded. It is loading in the browser, and by default, it will call the home controller and index action method. And with the same action method, we have already taken in our home controller application also, right? Yes, now you can see our data is showing on this view. ID, if you see in the code, what we have binded in this employee ID 5 Vipin Delhi. So this data is being rendered on this browser, right? So our code is working fine. So basically, we have bind our data to the view with the help of this model which we created under the model folder, right? S- So this was the one way, right? And now let's suppose I'm stopping the application, and now let's suppose we want to give a particular name. We want to assign a particular view name, right? Let's suppose we have changed the name of this view. We have taken any XYZ view, right? So we can assign the particular view name. So let's see. As we can see, it is taking these parameters. So you can see in this overload parameters that it can take string view name and the object model. So object model is the actual data we are already passing, and we can give the view name. View name is index, right? You can see view name is index, right? So now, and the view name should be in the, as it is going to take string, so we need to assign it in a string format, right? Now let's save the file, and now run the application. So let's wait. Yeah, we can see it is binding the actual data to the view. Now let's suppose we give the particular controller and action method name, right? So we are supposed to call home controller, and the under home controller we have to call index action method. So let's see, home controller, and then we need to call index action method, right? Now I'm pressing enter. We can see it is binding the same data, right? Now let me place the debugger so we can see the how it is working. I'm pressing enter now. Yes, so we can see it is coming over here, and we can see it is coming over here, and it will go to that particular method we are going to call, right? And it is going to fill this model, and again coming back to this data, and data is being populated with this data whatever we have assigned over here, right? And we are going to return this object model to which view, index view, or any xyz view name, whatever we want to send this data, right? And now pressing F5. Now we can see we have binded the data. And let's suppose in a real application we used to bring the data from the database. As of now I have assigned dummy data. Let's suppose uh, I have to, let's suppose we change the data. Now this time let's take ID 15 or 14, and this time let's take Lucknow, right? And the age is now 87. Save it file, save the file, and now let's run. Let's see it's working fine or not. The debugger will go here, go on the same place because we have placed the debugger. So we can see, yeah, debugger is control is being landed over here, and now the same stuff it will perform, and press continue, and it will now this time data will be binded. It is loading now. This time our data what we change like address and ID and age, accordingly it is being binded, right? So that was all about the models, how we can add models. So right, and about controllers and views we have already discussed. And in this video we have learned models, how we can add models and how we can bind that data in the models, right? And how we can return the same data to the particular view with the help of this model, right? So that was all about models. So thank you so much. And in the upcoming videos, I'm going to discuss about the major controls and all other things, right? So please subscribe to this channel so that you can get my so that you can get the latest notification whenever I'm going to upload tutorials on the MVC, right? So that was all for this topic. So thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care.